Now, some of you might be familiar with the process of making mind maps on paper, which is a great way to think about structuring an essay plan or revising. It's a very immediate way of getting your thoughts in order. You've got a lot of control because all you need is a piece of paper and a pen. You don't have to worry where all the functions are on a piece of software. It's great if you're working in a group as well, because you can all just sit around a piece of paper and let your ideas flow. Except, of course, when you start running out of space on the paper because you're studying something quite complex and you want to get as much information into your map as possible, either because you want a really detailed essay plan or because you want to make sure that you remember all this nuanced content for an upcoming exam. And then, of course, there's the problem of doing additional research as you're halfway through a map and suddenly realizing that you need to completely change the order in which your ideas are expressed, by which point you've just got too much information on the piece of paper. You can't really fit it all in, and really you might as well have just put it in bullet point order in a Word document in the first place. Now, I'm not saying you should never make a paper mind map, but MindView is excellent at allowing you to keep on modifying the proposed structure for an essay as you do more research. And it has an interface which enables you to never feel like you're running out of space, as long as you're clever about the way in which you use the tools to stop yourself from feeling overwhelmed. It can also be really useful for revision. But what we're going to start with today is a demonstration of how, with just a few tools, you can start with a mind map and end up with the first draft of an essay. Okay, so here we are in MindView, and I am going to go ahead and click on the mind map button here. And we're going to start off with a big empty white space and just a box in the middle. The first thing I like to do is go and change the background color, which can be helpful for students who find it challenging to look at black text against a white background. I'm going to choose an orange color there. And also I'm going to immediately go to File, go to Save As, and I'm going to browse to a new folder which I'm going to create on my desktop here. And I'm just going to call this Mind Map Test. And I'm going to save my mind map inside this folder. Now that's actually quite important, and it will become apparent why I've done that in a few minutes. Now I'm going to go back to home and I'm going to plan out an essay. So if any of these boxes on the screen have a blue boundary around it, that means it's selected. So if I click on the pink space there, it is no longer selected. Again, I click back on it and it is selected. This is important because it means that you can literally just type over the text. You probably don't want to go ahead and double click in there, because MindView has a shortcut which enables you to create new sections on the level below, and that is linked to the double click on the mouse, and I find a lot of people get caught out by that in the first instance. I'm going to select this and delete with the delete key, and with my subject box selected I'm going to put my title in. And this is quite a good title to use if the student is stressed about mind mapping something relating to their subject. It just means that you don't have to think too hard about the content and can just keep focused on learning the interface. Now, we've got a branch and a sub-branch button at the top of the screen. And if I click on sub-branch, we'll get an idea attached to that essay title. If I was to click on sub-branch again, it's going to create another one on the level below. Okay. And now if I click on branch, it makes it on the same hierarchical level. So a good way to think about this is, imagine you're making a family tree. Branches are brothers and sisters. They're on the same level. So this idea is on the same level as this idea, and sub-branches break that idea down further, so they're like children. So again, if I click on sub-branch again, it'll keep breaking that idea down and down and down. Now you can use those buttons. I really like to use keyboard shortcuts. I'm actually going to delete all of this content, and I'm going to show you how I might start mind mapping my making a cup of tea essay. I'm going to use two keys on the keyboard, the insert key and the enter key, and if you hover over the branch button, we can see that the keyboard shortcuts are actually written there. So enter for branches and insert for sub-branches. So I'm going to start myself off just by clicking on the sub-branch button, but from now I'm going to use these keyboard shortcuts. So what I like to do is just try and empty my brain of all the ideas that I might possibly want to get into my mind map, and I'm really going to worry about structure later on. Now I can simply start typing in tea, because obviously tea needs to be part of this process, and I'm going to press enter to save it. Then I'm going to press enter again. So remember, enter is the keyboard shortcut for creating another one on the same hierarchical level. And in the initial instance, I think it's almost good to not worry about structure at all, just to keep pressing enter and getting all of your ideas into the map. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And remember, enter after each one to save it. Now I've just spotted that I've accidentally put in water twice, but I'm actually going to leave it there for now so that when we come to structuring and reorganizing the map later, you can see how this kind of interface is really good at helping you pick up mistakes and duplications. Now if I did want to break down milk into subsections, I can use the insert key instead of clicking on the subbranch button. And that's going to give me a sub-branch there. So now I can literally type over the top, because remember, whenever any of the sections have a blue boundary around it, that means it's selected and you can literally type over the top. So I'm doing very little reaching for my mouse here. I'm just on the keyboard using insert and enter and typing in phrases as they come into my head. So I can type in semi-skimmed, press enter to save it, and of course enter again is going to create another one on the same level. Whole milk. And that's pretty much how it works. That takes a little bit of getting used to in the first place, because it can be really compelling to go in and click on stuff to change the text. But again, if I double click here, if I do it over the text, that will actually work and I can change it. But if I'm just a little bit further over to the right and I double click, it actually creates a sub branch. So there's a number of different ways that you can use the interface to create your ideas there. So now we've got the ideas in the map, we need to put them in some kind of order. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this numbering scheme button. So this is going to show us the order in which these ideas are expressed when we export it to Word later on. I'm just going to choose this one here, the 1.1 numbering scheme. And now we can see the order that these subjects are going to come out into my essay later on. So if I decided that I actually wanted to talk about milk first in my essay, I can literally click on this, drag it to the right of the screen, and I haven't let go of the left mouse button here. Can you see as I move the mouse to different parts of the map, it's actually trying to find places to deposit this section. And it's not going to do it until I let go of the mouse. So I'm going to move the mouse above T there, and see now it has numbered. This is the first section, and then you'd have a number of subsections: semi-skim milk, whole milk, etc. I could even drag soya milk out of here over T if I really wanted to break my map. And if I move it over the word itself, it makes it a subsection and it renumbers it. And it's really easy to fix. You can just drag that back over the parent topic and it'll just drop that into the subsection there. Now the point is that even with this rather frivolous subject that I've taken to demonstrate MindView, students can start seeing concepts that they can apply to an essay that they might need to write, especially if it's an essay with a very short title that demands they do a lot of work in defining the structure of the writing themselves. And now I've started to drop some ideas in, I can actually see some more hierarchies that I want to create. So I'm going to click back onto making a cup of tea. I'm going to press insert to get a new subsection and see it's reordered the sections a little bit, but that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and type in ingredients and press enter, and then I'm going to press enter again for a new section on the same hierarchical level, and then I'm going to type in equipment, and I can now start moving these sections into these new headings. So for instance, milk with all its subsections needs to go in ingredients. I can do the same with tea, I can do the same with water. So you can see this is the point where actually dragging things out into hierarchies might reveal that you've accidentally duplicated topics, but I can just go ahead and delete my duplicated water. I can put sugar into ingredients as well. And now if I was to click on equipment, and remember we're going to use the insert key to go onto the level below, or you can click on sub-branch, we can start throwing some ideas in for equipment that we're going to need to make this cup of tea. So we're going to need a cup, we're going to need a kettle, we are going to need a spoon. And then of course, if I want to talk about equipment first, I can drag it above ingredients and it's going to restructure the whole essay plan and renumber it for me. Now the temptation here would be to go in and start filling out the detail in the different sections of the essay, but that might not be the best strategy for some learners. So I think it is good to try and get students to spend as much time in the planning stage as possible, and if they quickly want to add a bit more information about a particular section, it's worth demonstrating the audio note function in MindView. So if I click on cup, for instance, and I go to insert at the top of the screen, and I click on audio note, then I've got the opportunity just to record a quick note directly into the mind map, so that when I come back to this section later on, when I've done a bit of restructuring, I've got a note to remind me of the more detailed thought I had about that particular section of the map. So it's really easy. I can just click on record now. Must remember to write in detail about china cups. There we go. And if I click on the little tick, we're going to see that it automatically places me in the folder that I made earlier on. So that's why I think it's a good idea to make your mind map inside a folder when you first save it, because that way you can literally just call these audio notes 1, 2, 3. You don't have to worry about naming them particularly. It just means that they're all saved in the same folder and kept together. So if you want to move the map to a USB stick or something like that, you literally just pick up the whole folder. Now we've got a little paperclip, and if I click on that, we can see that my audio recording is embedded in the map, and if I was to click on that, then I'd be able to listen back to that audio file. It might be good for students to try this once they've done a bit of structuring, move sections around in an order that they think is sensible, and now perhaps they're trying to flesh out the content, to perhaps plan paragraphs that they might want in a finished essay. The advantage of recording audio is that if they just need to get a quick idea into their map, it's a very fast way of doing that. It doesn't require them to type anything. Stopping and typing lots of information in any detail when they're trying to plan an essay can restrict getting into a state of flow. And before I go any further, just a quick note about navigation. I'm using a mouse at the moment, and if I move the mouse wheel up and down, it moves the map up and down. If I hold down the control key and use the mouse wheel, then it zooms it in and out and centers it on the page. And if I use the shift key at the same time as the mouse wheel, then it moves it from left to right. If you're working on a laptop though, you can literally pinch the trackpad to zoom the map in and out, and you can also move the map around on the screen with 2 fingers on the trackpad. Another useful tool is under the home section, and it's the fit all button. So if I click on that, it just bumps the map up to fill the entire screen. And now we're going to return to the little audio note that I made earlier underneath the paperclip embedded in this section of the map. Remember, if I hover over the paperclip, we can see any attachments in that section. This is really to demonstrate what is so powerful about planning out your essays in MindView, because if I had done some work in this section, for instance added in some audio or attached some research or written a note, everything that I've put in that section is going to travel to a new place on the map if I drag it and move it elsewhere. So again, my paperclip is still there, and if I hover over it, I've still got my audio note, and I can easily go and put that back, just drag it to the previous location on the map. This is where we start thinking about attachments in a bit more detail. So for example, if I was planning out my essay and I decided that I needed to gather the research that I've downloaded about kettles, well, I can click on the kettle section there. Under home, I can go and click on attachment, and I can browse to a file on my computer. Now I'm going to go to my desktop. I haven't got any research on kettles, but I have got some other research which I can add in. Something on modern epidemiology, that'll do. I'm going to click on that and click on open, and now we can see that the PDF file is attached there, and I can launch it just by clicking on it. And that pretty much works for any file that you've got on your computer. So for instance, if a student had recorded a lecture using a piece of software called Audio Notetaker, cut out all the bits that they didn't think were totally relevant to an upcoming exam, turn that into an audio file, and don't worry, we'll cover this software later, they could then link that audio file by browsing using the attachment button and actually linking it into the map. All these bits of assistive technology can work together in creative ways, and this will become apparent as we work through the other tools. But yes, for more about recording lectures, you'll see videos on Audio Note Taker later on. Now let's say that you'd read the PDF file that you had attached in Kettle here. You might want to start writing some paragraphs that might end up in your finished essay. So I could start on Kettle if that's the first thing that I felt I was comfortable to write about in my essay. It doesn't matter because of course we can always drag it to a different place in the map later on. Let's just put that back. With Kettle selected, I'm going to go up to Text Note at the top of the screen, and this gives me this white bar on the side of the screen. Depending on how your computer is set up, it might appear at the bottom of the screen first of all, and I can just start typing into this section. So the idea here is that the headings in your mind map might just be short phrases to remind you of content that you want to appear in your essay. They might not be titles that you want in your finished essay. They're just short phrases so that you can quickly get an overview of all the things that you need to say in your essay without becoming overwhelmed by language. So we're really going to reduce the amount of text that appears on the screen. These are good heading lengths, I think, but at the point you want to start typing content about your kettle, then you can just go into this box and type as much as you want. And we can actually make this wider if we want. We can drag it all the way across the screen. Sometimes it's useful to do that because you might find that the map is actually distracting you. So for instance, I could have this halfway. I could click back on home, click on fiddle so I could see the whole map. It might be hard to see everything on screen. The student might be worrying about the fact that they hadn't researched sugar properly. Sometimes it's useful just to minimize distractions and actually get on and type. And when I have the cursor in this text editor, you can see that all the controls have changed at the top of the screen. We've got a lot of formatting controls, which really make it look very much like Microsoft Word. So we can add in tables if we want. We can do a lot of color coding and changing text colors. We can change all the font sizes too. All that formatting is going to be preserved when we send this to Word later on. Now, I can move that back so I can see my map again. At the point that I've finished writing into this section here, I can go and click on this X. That will save all the changes that you've made. And again, if I was to move Kettle so it was in a completely different section of the map, we've still got our paperclip with our text note sitting alongside our PDF file. So hopefully this is going to demonstrate what we're going to do. We're going to export this map to a Word document, and what we'll end up with is all these headings in order, and beneath each heading, if there is a text note attached, that paragraph will be placed directly underneath it. So a student can start with a mind map and very quickly get a first draft of an essay. Just briefly, another attachment which I quite like are comments, and if I go down to sugar here and I go to insert and comment, comments I think can be used a bit differently to text notes. I quite like these to write statements about things that I need to do. Must research. Now the difference between text notes and comments is that if I go into sugar and I go and click on text note and I write some text and I close that note down, we can see under sugar we have both a paperclip with all our attachments, but we've also got this comment. And if I hover the mouse over the comment, then it just automatically pops out. So I think this is a good way of splitting up reminders for what you need to do in that section from text that you want to appear in your finished essay. And the reason I like to do this is because if you just want to quickly remind yourself how far you are through a particular section, you don't want to have to go into the paperclip and root through your text notes. The comments just automatically pop out and remind you. So this is great because now if I want to remind myself how far I am through sugar, I can just hover over that little section there and it'll pop out and it'll disappear when I click elsewhere. If I wanted something visual to really track how far I was through this section, I could click on sugar, go to the far right hand side of the screen and click on icons, and I'm going to choose 50% completed here, and that will put a little completion icon into that section. Now I like these because once those icons are actually added in, you can click on them to select them and then click on them again to keep moving the piece of pie round until you're happy that you have completed that section. So it's just a visual marker to help students decide which part of the map that they actually want to focus on, again, with less reliance on reading. Now, students need to be careful when mind mapping on a computer because these mind maps can get very, very large on screen. You know, if I was to add in a few more sections, we're already running out of space on the screen. Students have to be clever about the way they manage the visual content so that they don't end up in the same situation that they might have found themselves in a word processor, where maybe all their ideas are in a Word document and there's just too much text going on screen. Here's some ways students can work around that feeling of getting overwhelmed by a very large mind map. Remember, you can zoom in and out with Control and the mouse wheel, or you can pinch the trackpad and zoom it in and out. And importantly, whatever section of the map you have highlighted, when we zoom back in, it's going to track that particular section of the map. So this is where it's a good point to introduce images. Now, I might jump into Google Chrome now, where I have got a lot of pictures of tea. And I'm going to choose a picture of a cup of tea. I'm going to right click and I am going to literally copy that image. This menu bar might look slightly different depending on the web browser you're using, but basically you want to copy the image to the clipboard. I'm going back into MindView now. I'm going to right click on my T section and I am going to paste. So if I had a lot of complex information in my map, I at least know that if I'm zoomed all the way out, that even if it's difficult to see all the text on the screen, if I can see the picture of the cup of tea, that makes me remember that that's linked to the section I want to continue working on, I can then zoom in on that section of the map, either using the trackpad or the mouse and the control key, and it will lock it to that section of the map. Also, we've got these little handles here, and what these allow you to do is shut down bits of the map that you're not actually working on. So for instance, if I was working on equipment and this whole section on ingredients was a bit overwhelming, I could click on this little minus button and it will just nest that section of the map under ingredients. Now we've got a plus button here which shows there are sections nested, and you can just click on that to bring them back out again. Another useful tool, which is in a different menu, is the Apply Branch Focus tool. And I think this one is really important. If I just wanted to focus on ingredients, I can go up to View, and this tool is the one we're going to look at, Apply Branch Focus. When you click on that, it just shows you that section of the map. And now this whole section is basically working like a mini mind map. I could go into sugar here, I could press enter, we're going to get another section on the same level as sugar. Here's my new idea. I could press enter to save it, click on insert to get more ideas in, and then enter to save it and enter again. I can keep on working on this section of the map independently, and then when I'm happy to view the rest of my map again, I can go back up to the top of the screen and click on Clear Branch Focus. So there's a number of tools students can use to make sure that the map doesn't become overwhelmingly large. It's good to reinforce that students have to be constantly asking themselves, what am I doing at the moment? Am I working on a particular section? Am I restructuring the map? Do I need to view this map in a slightly different way? The more that they ask these questions when they're using the software, the less likely they are to be overwhelmed by the size of the map itself. So now, just so we can see something a bit less abstract than making a cup of tea, I've thrown together this mind map quickly. And we can see under the first section here in my attachments, I've got some text notes. So I've already started writing some text that potentially I want to put into my essay. And of course, I know that I could drag this down and talk about this as the second point, as a subsection within my section on Chaucer's career. If I look down here, as well as a text note, let me just move that over slightly. I've got this hyperlink that I've added in, which is linking to the poem in question, so I can click on it and it will just load it, which is great. So that's fine, that's worked really well. And you can do that by going to home, and instead of clicking on attachment, you can do hyperlink, and you can just go in and type the web address that you want to link to directly from your mind map. I've got a comment here to remind me that I need to go in and add more references, maybe attach some PDFs into that section for my bibliography. And all of these have got paragraphs that I've been writing as I've been working, which I want to come out in some kind of sensible order later on. Now, if I go up to Word and click on the drop down arrow here, I have two options. And first of all, I'm just going to do a quick Word export. Now, this is going to give me a lot more detail than I actually want, but it's to show you the level of detail that you can get in a Word export, and also to show you that you have control over it so that you can reduce the amount of content that goes into your Word export if that's something that you want to do. So if I click on this now, and I'm going to save this into my mind map test folder. Okay, so that has exported to Word, and I'm going to open the folder where my Word document is living, and I'm going to load it up. Okay, so we can see a great big grey bar on the right hand side of the screen, which I'll talk about in a second. We've got a title here as I continue. We've got a visualization of the mind map there. We've got a contents page that it's made for me as well, and each of the text notes that are attached to the individual sections has now appeared as paragraphs in the right order. But there's potentially a bit too much stuff going on here for me. I've got this formatting which I don't really like, because now I've got all these lines and this font style that I'm not keen on. It's put the images in, and really the images were just there in the map to help me navigate around it. I don't really need the icons to tell me I've completed that section as well. But what we should find as we continue is that the comment we added in has actually turned into a Word comment. So if you've never seen these before, once you're in Word, you can click on Review at the top of the screen, and we can see where these Word comments are managed. So you can jump back and forth between different comments that are in your Word document. And actually, when you're happy that you've resolved the comment, you can click on it and you can go ahead and delete it by clicking on the delete button here. And when you deleted the last one, that grey bar will disappear from the side of the screen. As a practical example, I would suggest students use comments to remind themselves to do things when the map is converted to Word format, just so it's nice and easy to separate the tasks they need to complete in their draft from text that's actually going to form part of their essay. So that's Word export, which is great, but I'm now going to show you a way of doing that that just simplifies the process a little bit. So instead now, I'm going to go up to Word, and instead of choosing Quick Word Export, I'm going to choose Custom Word Export. Now this just gives you a bit more control about what goes into your Word document. So for instance, we've got a lot of templates that we can scroll through here. I'm going to scroll right to the very bottom and choose a very, very simple format there. Now I'm going to click on General, and we can just turn off the bits that we don't want to include. So for instance, I don't think I really need a map image or a table of contents. I'm going to untick all of these because I don't need icons. Take them all out except for text notes, so the paragraphs that we want to see in our finished essay, and the comments, the statements that I've added in as yellow sticky notes to remind me of things that I might need to follow up on when this is converted into a Word document. Finally, I'm going to go into attached objects, and I'm going to shut all of these down. Now, I'm not saying all students should do this with every mind map. I'm just demonstrating how simple they can make their export. If their end goal is just to get their paragraphs out into Word in the right order, then they might want to do something like this. But for some students, there might also be value in exporting the sounds as hyperlinks, for example, so that if they click on a link in their Word export, they could hear the statement that they made to themselves right at the very beginning of the planning process, if it relates to some editing that they need to do once they've got it into Word. So let's click on Export now and see how different it actually looks. I'm going to save it in my mind map test folder. I'm going to call this one Geoffrey Chaucer 2. And I'm going to open the folder, and I'm going to load that document. So we can see this one's very different. We haven't got the same kind of formatting. And again, remember, these titles are just the titles that I included in my branch headings. They may not be headings that you want in your finished essay. You might just find them useful to see so that you can get a sense of the structure and order of your essay. Once these have served their purpose, you might just want to go in and delete those. It's worth noting that this is one thing MindView doesn't allow you to do. You can't export from MindView into Word and have a tick box that will remove all the branch headings. You do have to remove those manually. But the point is that we've now got all our paragraphs in the right order, as opposed to starting in Word, putting all of our ideas down in no particular order, and then having the horrible task of having to go around and drag and move paragraphs around and just being overwhelmed by too much text on the screen. We've still got our comments as well. If we scroll down, we can see that there. Again, we can go into review. We can choose the comment that we want to delete once we've actually tackled this. I can click on delete and that bar is now going to disappear. And finally, I'm just going to talk about revision. So mind maps are excellent for revising. We've still got very short titles in this mind map, but there's nothing to stop students going in, clicking on one of the sections, adding in a text note with more detail that they can use. So imagine that you've got some flashcards and you've got like a prompt, an image, or a bit of text on the front and more detail in the background. Students could put that content into comments if they found it easier. You could suggest the student records the answer as an audio note, so the revision process is then about speaking and listening. The student challenges themselves to speak aloud the answer to each of the questions posed in their mind map and then checks back as to whether they've got it right by listening to the answer which they've recorded as an audio note. It makes it very quick to actually go in and create revision mind maps, and it's an excellent way of testing your knowledge on a subject when you have to say it out loud, because you pretty quickly identify the gaps in your knowledge. Now let's imagine that I was starting with seasonal change here. So what I could do is I could click on the little minus button and hide all those sections, test myself on it, open it back up, and then mark off the ones that I got correct. So I just want to zoom in a bit more closely on our hedgehog here. So I'm going to click on it. And if you're on a trackpad, remember you can just treat it like a phone screen, put 2 fingers on the trackpad and move them apart. Or if you're using a mouse, you can hold down Control and use the mouse wheel to zoom in on that section. And I'm going to say that I got this one correct, so I'll go to Icons, give it a smiley face. For migration, I also got that one correct, but actually others, I didn't remember the others, so I'm going to give that a sad face. So the idea here is that you're marking off the ones that you got right, and then you're just going back in and trying the same process of covering and then showing again until you get all of the answers correct. And then once you've done that, shrink it down, click on the section that you've completed, go into Icons and give that a smiley face. Now at the point that you've given all these sections a smiley face, you can collapse that down, and if you've answered all the questions on animals correctly, you can give that a smiley face. So your job here is to use these icons to see which sections you have answered correctly and to collapse the map completely in on itself so that it's all down to the top level there. That's quite a nice way of testing your knowledge about a particular subject. Additionally, if you prefer to move over to a paper solution at this point, and I think this works really well, it gets you away from the computer screen for a while. It enables you to pick up some pens and draw all over your mind map. I think printing it out by going to File and then going to Print can be a really valuable way of working. Now, I am actually going to change the orientation of the page to landscape, and this feature is really helpful. We can actually add in a column and we can add in a row, and I can add in a further column and another row, and basically you can print a large mind map out over lots and lots of pages. It hasn't taken the background color of the map, so it's not going to print loads of blue and use all of your ink up, and you can actually see the map at a sensible size. So I guess you'd print this out, take all the pieces of paper, sellotape it together, stick it on the wall, and then you've got a really good revision tool that you can access without having to turn on MindView.